Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was already running on fumes when I pushed open the back door of the Wendy's on Clearwater Avenue that night, the cold metal handle slipping against my sweaty palm as I slipped inside and let the warm, greasy air swallow me up. Because honestly, I wasn't supposed to even be here anymore. Not after what happened 2 months ago when my mom got sick and I had to pick up extra hours. And not after I started picking up weekend shifts at the gas station down the block just to keep the lights on at my apartment. But here I was again at 10:52 p.m. trying not to yawn as I clocked in and rubbed the last bit of sleep out of my eyes, wondering how the hell I'd ended up in this loop of late night shifts and stale fryer oil. Because let's be real, nobody grows up dreaming about closing a Wendy's at midnight in a dying town where the only nightlife is the sound of semi-trucks downshifting on the empty highway outside. And I'd barely hung my apron on when I heard a voice from behind the prep table. "Yo, man, you look like you got hit by a damn bus." And I looked up to see our shift lead, a tall dude named Trey, whose entire personality was built around pretending he hated working here more than the rest of us did, which was probably true, but he covered it with sarcasm, and I muttered, "Didn't sleep, bro," while tying my apron tight, and he shrugged, "Same sessa, different night," before tossing me a headset and jerking his chin toward the drive-through window. "You got window tonight. Corporate wants us to log every customer time, like anybody even comes through after 11 anyway." And I rolled my eyes because, yeah, that sounded like some corporate nonsense. But I slipped the headset on and tried to shake the heaviness in my skull as I stepped toward the window and watched the parking lot outside. Empty except for a flickering street light that buzzed like an angry bee. And for the first hour it was dead. Just a couple of teenagers ordering fries, someone asking if we had lemonade even though the machine had been broken for weeks, and an old guy in a pickup who spent 5 minutes trying to pronounce Asiago. And I swear to God, the moment the clock hit 12:01 a.m., everything shifted like the air pressure dropped or something, because the headset crackled in my ear with this low static that didn't sound like the usual interference. It sounded like someone breathing way too close to the mic, and I pressed the button. "Wendy's on Clearwater, go ahead." But instead of an order, I heard a voice, deep and slow and way too steady to be a joke, whisper, "I know what you did last week." And I frowned because what the hell was this, and I said, "Yeah, okay, buddy. What you want to eat?" Thinking maybe it was just some drunk dude playing around. But the voice continued, "I saw you drop that bag behind the dumpster. Thought nobody saw that, huh?" And my whole body went cold, because last week, no freaking way. Last week I had taken out the trash, and behind the dumpster, I'd emptied out some extra chicken patties into a bag to take home, because my mom's meds had gone up and I was too broke to buy groceries, and nobody had been there, nobody had seen me, and I felt the hairs rise on my arms as I stepped back and muttered, "All right, Trey, real funny." But Trey was on the other side of the kitchen yelling at the grill guy and clearly not messing with me, so I hit the button again. "Who is this?" But all I got back was breathing, slow and wet like someone standing too close to a mic. Then the voice murmured, "You left the back door open," and my heart nearly stopped because that was true as hell. I had opened it when I walked in, but I swear I pushed it shut. And I spun around, headset slipping sideways on my ear as I hurried toward the back hallway, and sure enough, the door was cracked open an inch, swinging gently like someone had just slipped inside, and I whispered, "What the hell?" under my breath and shoved it shut, locking it this time. And when I went back to the front, Trey looked at me weird. "Yo, you good?" And I forced a laugh. Headset's glitching, that's all. But my hands were shaking because something didn't feel right in my bones, like that instinct you get when someone is behind you, even when you can't hear a thing. And around 1:09 a.m., things got worse because the headset beeped again, but I didn't even press the button. It answered itself, chiming open to static, and the same voice whispering, "You really think you can hide everything you've done?" And I ripped the headset off and threw it on the counter, and Trey huffed, "Bro, chill." But before I could explain, the drive-through bell dinged, meaning someone had pulled up, even though I hadn't heard a damn engine, and Trey pushed the headset toward me. "Just take the order, dude." So I put it back on, took a breath, and pressed the button. "Go ahead." But my voice cracked because I already knew what I was going to hear. And the voice, sounding closer now, almost like it was inside the restaurant, whispered, "Turn around." And against every instinct in my body, I did. And my blood froze because someone was standing at the far end of the kitchen, past the grill, where the shadows pooled under the flickering fluorescent lights, tall, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up, unmoving like a statue. And before I could say anything, the kitchen lights flickered and buzzed, and when they flared back to full strength, the figure was gone, just gone, like it had blinked out of existence. And Trey was staring at me like I'd lost my mind because he hadn't seen anything. And I choked. Someone was there. But he shook his head. "Dude, nobody's here but us." And maybe he was right. Maybe I was exhausted and hallucinating. But then the order screen lit up on its own, numbers and letters flickering before turning into a message typed across the whole display. "I see you even when they don't." And I stumbled back, hitting the counter hard enough that my hip throbbed, and Trey snapped, "Okay, what the hell is going on?" But before I could answer, the power surged, the lights dimmed, the fryer bubbled like something alive was moving inside it, and the office computer turned on by itself down the hall, its fan whirring loud enough to hear over the kitchen noise. So I hurried toward it because something in me knew the message would be there too. And when I stepped into the tiny office, the monitor showed a live feed from the backdoor camera, except the timestamp said 10:52 p.m., the moment I had arrived tonight. And the footage showed me walking in, but behind me, slipping through the door right after I entered, was the hooded figure, tall and silent, head tilted toward me like it was sniffing the air. And I stumbled back so hard I hit the desk and knocked over a stack of inventory sheets, and I whispered, "No, no, no," because how the hell had I not seen someone behind me? And Trey stepped into the doorway asking what I'd found, but before I could answer, the speakers in the dining room crackled to life with the same deep voice saying, "Tell him the truth," and Trey spun around. "Tell me what?" And all the guilt I'd been hiding, the stolen food, the messed up inventory numbers, the extra hours I lied about, crashed into me as I whispered, "I don't know why this is happening." But the voice laughed, low and slow, "Tell him or I will." And suddenly every TV screen in the dining room blinked on, showing footage of me from the past few weeks, me slipping extra food into a bag, me adjusting numbers on the inventory tablet, me eating fries behind the freezer door on break. And Trey stared at me like he didn't even know who I was anymore. But I didn't even have time to defend myself because the front lobby door unlocked on its own with a clack loud enough to echo, and the wind outside howled through the cracks as the door slowly pushed open and the hooded figure stepped inside, finally visible under the dim yellow light, tall and wrong somehow, like its limbs bent where they shouldn't bend, like it wasn't built to stand like a person. And Trey backed up fast, whispering, "Yo, what the fuck is that?" And I whispered, "I don't know," even though something deep in me felt like I did, like I'd been followed long before tonight, like every shift I'd brushed it off as exhaustion or paranoia. And the figure stepped forward, its voice echoing through every speaker, every headset, every buzzing light fixture, saying, "This is your real shift, Brian. This is the one you earned. And the grill hissed like it was reacting to the creature's words, and the fryer oil bubbled up as if something underneath was trying to claw its way out, and Trey yelled for us to run, but the lobby door slammed shut, locking us inside with a mechanical click, sealing us in as the figure's shadow stretched across the tile like ink spreading across water, and the computers all at once displayed the same message. Clock in for your final shift, and the time card machine beeped even though nobody touched it, printing out a slip with my name on it and the timestamp 3 a.m. And the figure whispered, "You're late," and then everything went black, like someone pulled the plug on reality itself. And when I woke up, if waking up is even the right word, I wasn't in the Wendy's I knew. The walls were wrong, the colors were off. The air smelled like burnt plastic and something rotten buried deep in the vents, and the menu screens showed items I'd never seen before. Things like red meal and night shift combo and flesh special. And beside the fryer stood Trey, except his skin looked like it was sagging, melting like wax dripping down the side of a candle. And when he turned toward me, his mouth moved, but all that came out was static, harsh and broken like white noise trying to form words, and the hooded figure stood behind the counter smiling with no mouth, its voice echoing inside my skull saying, "This is where you work now." And every night since then, I stand at the window serving customers with faces that don't look human, customers whose eyes glow or whose jaws hang loose, customers who whisper things about my past that I never told anyone, and I keep getting emails on the office computer, always from the same sender, always saying the same thing. "We're watching your performance, keep up the good work," and sometimes at exactly 3 a.m., when the whole place hums like a machine powering up, I feel something pull at my bones, like I'm connected to this place now, stuck here forever. And I know deep down, I'm never going home. Not really, because whatever clock I punched into that night wasn't for a normal shift. It was for something permanent, something I can't quit, something that won't ever let me leave. And all I can do now is keep working until something finally shuts me down for good. Because this Wendy's isn't a restaurant anymore. It's a trap, a cycle, a place that eats people alive, and I'm pretty sure I'm next on the menu. I hated working the night shift at Wendy's. There was something about the way the restaurant felt after midnight, the flickering boards, the hum of the soda machine, the distant laughter of drunks stumbling in for burgers. But most of all, I hated the silence between customers. It was never truly quiet. The fryer bubbled, the freezer hummed, and the security cameras made their faint mechanical clicks as they switched angles. But in those moments between customers, when the air conditioner stopped and the deep fryer wasn't in use, there was an eerie stillness that made my skin crawl. I checked the time, 1:47 a.m., 3 more hours. Then I could go home, shower off the smell of grease, and collapse into bed. It had been a slow night, just a handful of people coming in, mostly Uber drivers, some wasted college kids, and a guy who kept nervously glancing at the door, like he was waiting for someone to follow him in. I wiped down the counter, glancing at the cameras. Out of habit, the parking lot was mostly empty, except for a single car. At the far end, an old beat-up sedan that had been sitting there for at least an hour. No one had come in from it. No one had left weird, but not my problem. I turned back to check the fryer. That's when I heard it scrub, scrub, scrub. A slow dragging sound like someone shuffling their feet across the tile floor. I froze. There was no one inside. I was alone. I turned my head slowly, scanning the dining area. The booths were empty. The trash cans were still. The glass doors at the entrance reflected nothing but the glow of the streetlights outside. Maybe I was imagining it, but then I heard it again, closer this time. Scraw, scraw, scraw. I took a step back, gripping the counter, and then just beyond the glass doors, I saw him, an old man, thin, frail, wearing a tattered, oversized coat that hung off his body like it belonged to someone else. His beard was long, uneven, and dirty, stretching down past his collarbone, but it wasn't his appearance that made my breath catch in my throat. It was his eyes. They were black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye, like two endless voids staring straight at me. He was standing completely still, just a few feet from the entrance, staring directly at me through the glass. Then he did something that made my blood turn to ice. He waved, not a friendly wave, not a casual one, just a slow, deliberate raise of his hand, his fingers twitching slightly as he moved them back and forth. I swallowed hard. My instinct was to look away, to turn and pretend I hadn't seen him, but I couldn't because something was wrong. He hadn't walked up to the entrance. I had been checking the cameras. I had been watching the parking lot. He hadn't been there, and yet here he was standing, watching, smiling. My fingers hovered over the lock button on the register screen, but before I could press it, the automatic doors slid open. The man stepped inside. The shuffling sound was deafening. Now each step he took was slow and deliberate, his torn shoes scraping against the tile as he moved closer. I took a step back. He stopped for a moment. Neither of us moved. The only sound in the restaurant was the buzzing of the neon signs above the menu. Then, in a war-dry voice, he spoke. "You see me, don't you?" My mouth felt dry. I tried to respond, but no sound came out. His smile widened. "Good." And then, just like that, he was gone. No footsteps, no movement, just gone. The automatic doors hadn't opened. The air inside the restaurant hadn't shifted, but the space where he had been was empty. I stood there, heart pounding, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. And then from the corner of my eye, I saw the security monitor, the live feed from the parking lot, the sedan that had been sitting there for an hour. The driver's side door was now open, and someone was standing next to it. Someone with black eyes, and they were waving. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to look at the screen, but I had to. The figure stood next to the sedan, his black eyes locked onto the security camera, that same slow, unnatural wave. I backed up toward the kitchen, my breath coming in, shallow gasps. My mind raced for explanations. Maybe it was a prank, a setup, but how did he vanish from inside the store? How did he end up back outside? I needed to check the footage, fumbling with the touch screen. I rewound the security feed to the moment the man entered the restaurant, except he never did on the footage. The glass door slid open, but no one came in. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. I had seen him, I had heard him, but on camera, nothing. I fast-forwarded. There was me standing frozen, staring at an empty space in the lobby. Then there was me stepping back, my lips moving as if responding to someone who wasn't there. I felt sick. I switched the camera angle to the parking lot. The sedan was still there, but this time, something was different. The driver's side door wasn't just open, it was hanging wide, as if it had been yanked by force, and inside, slumped over the steering wheel, was a body. I bolted for the phone. 911. What's your emergency? I could barely get the words out. There's someone outside, a man, and I think there's a dead body in a car. Can you describe the man? I swallowed hard. Tall, thin, old black eyes. He was inside, but then he wasn't. A pause. Then did you say black eyes? A CH ran down my spine. Yes. I whispered. Another pause. Stay inside and lock the doors. Officers are on their way. I hung up and immediately hit the lockdown button on the register. The doors clicked shut. It felt like hours before the cops showed up. Though it was probably only 10 minutes, I saw the flashing lights first. Then the officers stepping out, shining their flashlights toward the sedan. One of them peered inside and immediately turned to his partner, motioning for backup. Within seconds, more officers arrived. I hesitated before unlocking the doors, But when an officer motioned for me, I unlatched the bolt and stepped outside. The air felt thick. "Wrong the officer's name tag," read Reynolds. He was in his 40s, built like a linebacker, and had that weary expression cops get when they've seen too much. "You the one who called?" I nodded. "Yeah, I saw someone, an old man. He was inside. Then he was outside." Reynolds glanced at the sedan inside, where I turned and pointed at the Wendy's lobby inside. "Here another officer, a younger guy, shot me a look. You're saying he walked in?" "Yes, I think so. The doors opened, but the cameras, I trailed off feeling stupid. The cameras didn't pick him up." I finished weakly. Reynolds gave me a long look, then he sighed. "Come here." I hesitated before following him toward the sedan. The other officers had already set up a perimeter. The flashing lights painted everything in red and blue. Then I saw the body. It was a man, probably in his 50s, slumped over the wheel. His skin was pale, his lips slightly open, and something about his posture, about how still he was, told me he had been dead for a while. "Recognize him?" Reynolds asked. I shook my head. Then he stepped aside, and I did recognize him. It was the old man. Same beard, same frail build, same coat, but his eyes weren't black anymore. They were just empty. I stumbled back. "That's him," I whispered. "That's the guy who came inside." Reynolds exhaled through his nose. "Number, that guy's been dead for at least a day." My stomach flipped. "That's not possible," I said, shaking my head. "I talked to him. He waved at me." The younger officer frowned. "You sure you weren't just seeing things? Night shifts mess with people's heads." I wanted to argue, but the longer I stood there, the more I started to doubt myself. Had I imagined it had exhaustion, played tricks on my mind? But no, the security doors opened, the scraping sounds, the wave I hadn't imagined. That I turned to Reynolds, my voice barely above a whisper. Then who the hell was I talking to? Reynolds didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked back at the body in the car. Then finally he said, "You wouldn't be the first person to see something like this. I quit Wendy's the next week. I didn't tell anyone. Why not? I really just said I was burned out and that I wanted to find something else. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had seen something that wasn't supposed to be real, and worse, something had seen me back." I had no idea that taking the night shift at a Wendy's on the south end of Ridgemont would flip my whole life upside down. But looking back now, I guess all the signs were always there, tucked between the hum of the fryers, the flickering neon outside that corporate never bothered fixing, and the strange way the streets got dead silent past midnight, like the whole town clocked out at 11 and left the rest of us to deal with whatever wandered around after hours. And I guess that's why I took the job in the first place, because working nights meant fewer people, less noise, and more space to let my brain breathe. Especially after everything that had gone down the year before, when my dad passed away from a heart attack out of nowhere, and my mom packed up and moved to her sister's place in Arizona and left me with a stack of bills and a "you'll figure it out, hun" voicemail. Which wasn't exactly comforting, but it pushed me to hustle, so I picked up whatever shifts I could find, and Wendy's was the one that stuck, mostly because the manager, old Mr. Hawkins, was one of those no-nonsense dudes who didn't care about anything as long as you showed up on time and didn't steal the chocolate frosty mix. And I guess I liked that kind of low-pressure structure, something steady, something quiet. And that's how I ended up working 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 4 nights a week, wearing a fading red polo shirt that smelled like grease no matter how many times I washed it, and clocking into a restaurant that felt like a second home except colder and way more depressing, but still familiar enough to feel safe, at least until that one night that changed everything. So I remember the exact second everything started to feel weird. It was a Thursday, barely 10:15 p.m., and I had just finished restocking the ketchup packets near the soda machine when I noticed this guy outside standing by the big glass windows, not doing anything, not moving, just standing perfectly still with his hands shoved into the pockets of this dark, oversized hoodie. And he was facing the door, but not exactly looking inside. More like he was tilted slightly down, like he was watching his own shoes. But something about the angle of his head made me feel like he was actually watching us. And at first, I brushed it off. Because trust me, you see a lot of weirdos working late nights. Folks high off something they can't pronounce. Truckers exhausted to the point of hallucinating. Teens daring each other to lick the drive-through intercom. So a dude zoning out outside wasn't exactly a red alert situation, but something in my stomach twisted a little. Like that gut instinct thing people talk about in horror movies. And I tried telling myself it was nothing. Just my paranoia acting up again, because I'd been pulling too many back-to-back shifts. But still, every time I looked up, the guy was there. Same posture, same stillness, and it didn't feel right, because even weirdos shift their weight or scratch their neck or check their phone, but this guy just existed there like a statue. And around 11:50 p.m., right when I was wiping down the front counter and thinking about grabbing a soda to keep myself awake, he finally walked in. Not fast, not slow, just this unnervingly steady pace, like he'd timed each step. And he approached the counter where I was standing and looked up at me from under his cap, but his eyes were hidden in the shadow. And for a second, I felt this cold wave rush through my chest like someone had opened a freezer door behind me. And I forced myself to smile the standard, "Please don't be a psycho, I just work here." Fast food smile and said, "Hey there, welcome to Wendy's. What can I get started for you tonight?" Except he didn't answer right away, and I could see his fingers tapping against the counter in a slow, weirdly rhythmic pattern. Not impatient, not nervous, just tapping, like he was keeping time to a song only he could hear. And I swear the air felt heavier the longer he stayed silent, until finally he said in this soft, too-even voice, "You here every night?" And instantly, I felt my throat tighten. Because who asks that as the first question to someone they've never met? And I kinda stuttered, yeah, most nights, why?" And he didn't explain. He just let this faint smile tug at one side of his mouth, like that was the answer he wanted. And he said, "Good to know," before turning around and leaving without ordering anything. And I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until the door swung shut behind him. Now usually, a creepy dude comes in, asks a weird question, leaves, and that's the whole event. And you move on with your night and talk about it later with your coworkers like, "Bro, you won't believe the guy who came in last night." But something about him stuck to me, like a smell you can't wash off. And I hated that I kept glancing toward the windows every few minutes, expecting to see him again. By 2 a.m., it was just me and my coworker, Tasha, a loud, sarcastic girl from the next neighborhood over, who always wore her hair in a messy bun and talked like every sentence was an audition for a stand-up special. And she was in the back scrubbing trays while I cleaned the soda machine, trying to stop my brain from replaying that guy's voice on loop. And that's when I noticed him again, this time across the street, leaning against a lamppost like he'd been waiting there the whole time. And I felt my stomach drop hard, and I called out, "Yo, Tash, you seeing this?" And she peeked over my shoulder and said, "What? That dude giving Dollar Tree Slender Man vibes?" And I nodded, swallowing the heaviness in my chest, and she frowned and said, "Wasn't he in here earlier?" And I told her exactly what he'd asked me, and her face changed instantly. That loud, playful expression gone, replaced by the quiet, alert kind of look people get when they sense something is off. And she said, "Nah, that's mad weird." And before we could say anything else, we glanced back out and he was gone. Later, around 3 a.m., Tasha went on break and left me alone at the front counter. And I swear less than 5 minutes passed before the door swung open again. And there he was, walking in with that same steady, unsettling pace. And he didn't look at the menu or the counter or anything else. He just walked to the table near the window and sat down with his back straight, staring through the glass like he was waiting for the world outside to do something. And again, he didn't order a damn thing, and his fingers started tapping that same rhythm, and the hairs on my arms stood up because I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't here to eat or rest or anything normal. He was here for me. So I did the polite worker thing and said, "Sir, if you're not ordering, I can't really let you sit inside this late." And he slowly looked up at me and gave that same too calm smile and said, "I'll wait." And I said, "Wait for what?" And he didn't answer, just stared. Before I could press him, the door opened again and another guy walked in, shorter, stockier, wearing sunglasses even though it was literally pitch black outside, and he scanned the room like he was checking for exits, and the two men made eye contact for a half second, this unspoken acknowledgement that made my skin crawl, because I could tell instantly they knew each other. And the second guy walked up to the counter and said in this deep, gravelly voice, "Coffee, black." And every instinct in my body screamed that something was really, really wrong. As I poured the coffee in the back, I glanced through the window and saw a girl walking alone on the sidewalk. Long brown hair, headphones in, hoodie zipped halfway up, scrolling on her phone like she didn't have a clue the world was anything but safe. And both men, the first at the table and the second near the counter, turned their heads toward her at the exact same time, like synchronized predators catching the same scent, and my chest squeezed so hard I nearly dropped the coffee pot. The second guy took the cup and walked out, and a few seconds later, the first one stood and followed, and something in me snapped because I couldn't let whatever they were planning just happen. So I yelled for Tasha and ran outside, shouting, "Hey, yo, wait up." And the girl looked confused, pulling out her left earbud like she couldn't tell if I was yelling at her or someone else. And that's when I saw the second guy reaching for her wrist, and I barreled forward screaming, "Back the hell off!" and shoved him as hard as I could, and he stumbled back, surprised. But the first guy grabbed me and slammed me against the brick wall so fast, I swear my vision sparked white for a second, and he leaned in close and said in this low, hateful voice, "You don't get to ruin this," and his grip was strong, too strong for someone his size, and the girl finally realized what was happening and bolted, sprinting down the sidewalk, and the second guy cursed and took off after her. Instinct took over, and I elbowed the first guy in the ribs, twisting out of his grip, and I chased after them, adrenaline drowning out everything else. And by the time I caught up, they had her cornered in an alley behind the pawn shop next door, the second guy blocking the exit while the first approached her like a wolf stalking prey, and she was screaming for help, voice cracking with fear, and I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a dented metal trash can lid, and swung it as hard as I could at the second guy's head. And he went down instantly, collapsing like a dropped sack of flour. The first guy spun toward me, face contorted with this mix of rage and shock, and he said, "You don't understand what you just did." But I didn't care, because sirens were blaring in the distance. Someone must have heard the girl screaming and called 911, and the girl ran to me, clutching my arm and sobbing, and the first guy looked at the flashing lights approaching, and gave this cold, ominous smirk and said, "We'll see you again," before bolting deeper into the alley and disappearing into the night like he'd melted into the shadows. The cops arrived, arrested the second guy, took statements, asked questions, and promised to increase patrol around the area. But I knew in my gut none of that mattered, because one of them was still out there, and the way he'd smiled before running told me that night wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something I wasn't ready to face. And even now, months later, Every time I walk into a night shift, I still feel that same cold wave rush through my chest, like he's somewhere nearby, watching, waiting, tapping that slow rhythm with his fingers in the dark. I always thought my life was pretty uneventful, nothing worth writing down or remembering, just another guy scraping by on late shifts and lukewarm coffee. But things changed the year I took the night shift at the Wendy's off Briarwood Highway, a place locals mostly drove past unless they were starving or drunk. And I only took the job because my rent got bumped up again, and my old man kept reminding me on the phone every Sunday that I needed to get it together, kid. Which always made me roll my eyes because he hadn't gotten anything together a single day in his own life. But whatever, I needed the money, and I needed something to do other than stare at my ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering why my life never seemed to go anywhere. So I applied, got hired on the spot, and ended up working nights alongside a guy named Trevin, who was funny as hell and quick with jokes but always on edge after midnight. Like the darkness outside the windows crawled under his skin, and a girl named Lila, soft-spoken but quick-witted, always saying real talk before telling you something bleakly honest, and the three of us would joke around to keep ourselves awake, messing with the fry timers or talking shit about customers. And honestly, I didn't mind it. The hum of the fryers, the sizzling oil, the fans rattling above us, the empty parking lot glowing under dull street lights. It all felt like white noise that kept my brain from spinning too fast. But everything shifted one Thursday night near the end of October, when I got there early because my apartment building's elevator had broken again, and I didn't feel like climbing 6 flights of stairs just to sit alone in a room that smelled like takeout containers. So I showed up at 9:15 p.m., pushing through the smudged glass doors and hearing Trevin say, "Yo, early bird, why you here before shift?" And I shrugged and said, "Elevator's busted again, man." And he laughed. "Damn, you live in a whole horror movie," which should have been funny, but that night it landed weird, heavy, like he'd jinxed something, and the air already felt different, colder than usual. And I swear, the fluorescent lights seemed dimmer, even though they were buzzing full power. And when Lila came out of the walk-in, she looked pale, like she hadn't slept or had seen something jarring, and she wiped her forehead and said, "Y'all feel weird tonight, like the building's off?" And Trevon raised an eyebrow. "Girl, what does that even mean, the building's off?" And she shook her head. "I don't know, real talk. It's like someone's been in here." And I laughed because our manager, old Mr. Rockwell, was too lazy to even show up on time, let alone wander in earlier than scheduled. But then Lila said, "No, I mean inside, like behind the counter." And that made me stop, because the doors had been locked before I came in, and Trevin said nobody else had been there except him. And while we were all looking around like idiots, the door chime rang, even though nobody had opened it. That soft electronic ding that only sounds when someone pushes the door, and all three of us froze, staring at each other until Trevon whispered, "Ain't nobody touched the door." And he wasn't wrong. I was standing right in front of it, close enough that I would have felt the rush of cold air, but nothing had moved. No footsteps outside, no car, nothing. And the chime still echoed softly in the air like it was mocking us. And Lila whispered, "Don't do that, y'all. I'm serious. I heard someone talking earlier near the supply closet." And Trevon shook his head. "Talking? Like what? Customers? Homeless guy?" And she swallowed and said, "No, like whispering." And that word hung between us like a cold breath because none of us wanted to admit it. But the Wendy's had always felt too big at night. Too many corners, too many shadows behind stacked boxes and sauce crates, too many places someone could hide. And to shake it off, I said, "It's probably the AC vents. They whistle sometimes." And Lila shot me a deadpan look. "That wasn't no damn vent. And Trevon muttered, "Man, don't start, it's almost Halloween, that's why y'all hearin' shit." But even he didn't sound convinced, and we tried to return to normal, restocking sauces, wiping counters, booting the grill for the late-night rush that rarely came. But I noticed Trevon kept glancing toward the dining room, toward the far left corner where the lights didn't quite reach. Like the shadows there were deeper than they should be. And around 10:30, a black pickup pulled into the lot. Slow, like the driver was unsure if they wanted food or something else. And Trevon groaned, "Here we go, late rush startin'." But the truck didn't pull up to the speaker. It didn't move at all, just sat there idling with its headlights off, which was weird as hell. So weird that even Lila whispered, "Why the lights off?" And I shrugged. Maybe the guy's on the phone or something. But after a full 2 minutes of nothing happening, Trevon said, "Nah, that's weird, man." And he walked to the window to get a closer look, but the truck was angled so we couldn't see the driver, just a faint silhouette behind the wheel, head tilted like they were looking directly at us, even though the interior was pitch black, and something about it made my stomach twist. So I forced myself to break the tension and said, "Whatever, dude's probably high." And Trevon laughed nervously, "Real high?" And we went back to prepping. But I kept glancing back because the truck still hadn't moved, engine humming low like a growl, and around 10:45 it suddenly sped off without warning. No lights, no hesitation, peeling out so hard the tires squealed, and Trevon said, "Man, hell no, that's drug dealer energy right there." And Lila muttered, "Or stalker," and she looked at me when she said it, which I didn't appreciate, and I told her, "Don't make it weird." And she whispered, "I'm not making it weird." But whoever was in that truck wasn't looking at me or Trevon, and the way she said it made my throat dry. And then the chime rang again on its own, twice this time, like someone had walked in and out, but the doors never opened. No breeze, nothing. And Trevon dropped the spatula and said, Bro, tell me y'all heard that." And I said, "I heard it." And Lila said, "I told you someone's been inside." And that was the moment the night officially crossed into wrong territory, like we'd stepped into some alternate version of the store, where things moved without being touched, and shadows seemed heavier than the air they sat in. But we tried to stay rational, telling ourselves it was a glitch, an electrical issue, whatever. And around 12:15 a.m., we finally got a customer, some guy in a faded brown jacket who walked in with a limp and kept his hood low. And he didn't make eye contact, just muttered, "Baconator combo." And Trevon said, Yeah, sure, that'll be $10.87. And the guy didn't move, didn't reach for his wallet, just stared at Trevon's name tag and whispered, "You're still here." And Trevon froze. "What?" And the guy smiled in this crooked way that made my stomach clench and said, "Nothing, man, just talking." And finally pulled out a wad of cash, and when Trevon tried handing him his change, he whispered, "You should have left earlier," and walked away before taking his food, pushing out the door so slowly it didn't even make sense. And when he was gone, Trevon ran both hands over his head and said, "Nah, hell no. What the hell was that? Why'd he say that?" And Lila whispered, "Real talk. We should close." But we couldn't close. Corporate checks the cameras, and even if they didn't, we needed the hours. And I couldn't explain it, but the walls felt tighter all of a sudden, like the store was shrinking around us. The corners darker, the air colder, and when the clock hit 1:07 a.m., the chime rang again. But this time, the doors slid open even though nobody touched them, and nobody was outside. Not even a car. And Trevon yelled, "Yo, who is doing that?" And his voice echoed off the empty dining room, bouncing back at us, sounding smaller than before. And in that moment, all three of our phones buzzed at the exact same time, like synchronized lightning. And Trevon grabbed his first and said, "What the? Nah, y'all look at this." And he turned his screen toward us. And it was a photo of the three of us standing behind the counter, taken from somewhere inside the store, but the angle was wrong, way too high, like the camera was on the ceiling looking down, except no camera was there, and I felt every hair on my arm stand up as my phone buzzed again, and a new message came in with a voice recording 5 seconds long, and when I pressed play, a whisper came through, low and raspy, "You shouldn't be here." And I swear it felt like someone was breathing on the back of my neck, and Trevin grabbed the keys and said, "We're leaving. I don't give a shit. We're leaving right now." And Lila was crying quietly, whispering, I told you someone's inside." And just as we turned toward the doors, every light in the store shut off at once, plunging the place into darkness, except for the faint glow of the fryers cooling and the emergency sign above the exit. And somewhere deep in the dining room we heard footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps, like someone didn't know how to walk properly. And Trevin grabbed my arm so hard I felt his nails dig into my skin and whispered, "Don't move." And the footsteps stopped, dead silent, and Lila whispered, "Where is he?" And the answer came from right behind us, a voice so soft I barely registered it as human at first, whispering, "Right here." And I turned instinctively, stupidly, and saw a figure standing inches from me, hood covering his face, hands dangling unnaturally long at his sides, and before I could scream, he leaned forward and whispered, "I told you to leave earlier." And Trevin shoved me aside and bolted for the exit, and I grabbed Lila and ran after him as the figure moved with this jerky, unnatural motion, like his limbs weren't connected right, and we burst out through the doors, sprinting across the lot, Trevin fumbling the keys to his car, screaming, "Get in, get in, get in." And when we looked back through the glass, the figure was standing inside the store staring at us, head tilted like he was memorizing our faces, and just before Trevin peeled out of the lot, the man lifted a hand and pointed directly at me, slowly, deliberately, and mouthed something I couldn't hear, but felt in my bones. Next time, and I swear even now, months later, even after I quit and moved across the state, I still hear that damn chime sometimes in my dreams, ringing on its own, calling me back to a store I will never step foot in again, because I know he's still in there, waiting, whispering, watching for the moment I let my guard down, the moment I walk through a door and hear that soft ding that means he's found me again. I always thought working nights at a Wendy's was the easiest way to survive adulthood, and I used to joke that the fryers taught me more discipline than my own parents ever did. But the truth is that the night shift became my comfort zone long before it ever became my job. And by the time I hit 27 and landed at the Wendy's off Maple Ridge Highway in the small, half-forgotten town of Larkview, I actually felt like I had found a routine that made sense for once. No customers breathing down my neck. No managers micromanaging my every move. Just me, the hum of the freezers, the rhythm of the grill, and the kind of silence you only get after midnight in a place where even the street lights buzz like they're tired. I'd been there almost 4 years, long enough that the guys from the auto shop next door would call me Night Crew Nate, even though my actual name is Nolan, long enough that I could assemble a Dave's double blindfolded, long enough that I developed this weird ritual of leaning my elbows on the stainless steel counter at 1:17 a.m. every night to take the same 30-second break, staring out at the parking lot that always looked like the set of a crime documentary, dim, empty, reflective from old oil spills. And it always hit me how the whole world felt paused in those minutes, like everything was holding its breath. I didn't complain though, because earning quiet felt easier than earning respect, and honestly, the silence made my thoughts louder, which I kinda needed after growing up in a house where nobody listened to anyone else. That's probably why what happened that night carved into me deeper than anything else I've ever experienced. Because it didn't start with some horror movie moment. Nothing supernatural or dramatic. No flickering lights or creepy voices. It started with me doing exactly what I did every night. Clocking in at 10 p.m., tossing my hoodie into the storage cubby, greeting whoever was stuck on shift with me, which on that particular Monday happened to be my supervisor, a short-tempered chain-vaping guy named Trevor, who always said bro too much, and a newer cashier named Mel, who was barely 20, and talked with this soft Midwestern accent that made every sentence sound like a question. The three of us were settling into the usual awkward quiet when Trevor tossed his vape aside and muttered, "Yo, Nolan, heads up. It sent an email saying our drive-through camera's been glitching all day, like static and random freezes, so if someone pulls up and it looks messed up, just ignore it." And I remember shrugging because everything in that store glitched, from the card reader that beeped like it had a stutter to the ice machine that sounded like it was dying of old age. But I wish now, with my whole damn soul, that I had taken that warning seriously. Around 12:40 a.m., the rain started, and not the usual soft drizzle, but a heavy pounding downpour that made the parking lot look like a black mirror. And I was scraping the grill when Mel looked up suddenly and said, did either of you take an order? Something just showed up on here." And Trevor walked over, rolling his eyes, until he saw the screen and froze because it wasn't one of our usual mobile orders, and not the typical 2 junior bacon cheeseburgers, no mayo. It was just one item, typed weirdly, not in the normal system font. 1 times Ridge Runner Melt, paid in cash, pick up now. I frowned because we didn't even sell something called a Ridge Runner Melt. Never had. And Mel whispered, that's not real, right? And Trevor shrugged it off, saying maybe it was a glitch or some test item accidentally loaded from corporate system, but the ticket printed anyway and fluttered out like it was mocking us. And Trevor laughed nervously. Bro, it's probably some IT clown messing with us. But his laugh didn't land. It felt thin, fake, like he didn't even convince himself. I threw the ticket away, but 15 minutes later, the drive-thru beeped. One long beep, not the normal pattern, and Mel jumped. Jesus, that scared me. And Trevor hit the button. Welcome to Wendy's, go ahead. And at first, all we heard was rain, like someone placed the mic under a waterfall. Then a low, muffled voice said, I'm here for my order. Slow, dragging every word like they were being pulled through mud. Trevor cleared his throat, trying to sound normal. What order you talking about? And the voice replied, the Ridge Runner. Crisp this time, too crisp, like it wasn't the same voice. And Mel turned toward me, eyes wide, whispering, Nolan, we don't have that. And I shook my head because something in my stomach twisted tight, like a warning I couldn't explain. Trevor, annoyed but rattled, said, Sir, that's not a menu item. And the voice breathed out, this long exhale that made the speaker crackle, then said, check again, with a calm that made the hairs on my neck rise. Trevor leaned back, muttering, Bro, I'm not doing this. But the drive-through camera flickered on its own, even though no one touched the screen, and the monitor showed the drive-through lane. But instead of a car or even rain, it showed a frozen image of a man standing directly in front of the window, face hidden under a soaked dark hood, angled down like he was staring at the ground, not moving at all. Mel gasped, Where's his car? Why is he just standing there? But the weirdest part was that the timestamp on the camera feed wasn't moving, like the footage wasn't live but stuck. And yet the rain in the background moved in slow loops, repeating like a glitch in a video game. Trevor stepped back, shaking his head. Nope, I'm not opening that window. And we all jumped when the fryer suddenly popped like something exploded inside it. send an oil bubbling violently for no reason. I felt this cold pressure behind my ribs, like the air thickened, and I walked to the window even though every part of me screamed not to, and I whispered, "Hello?" Even though I knew that was stupid, but before I could say anything else, the camera feed flickered again and zoomed by itself straight onto the man's face, or where his face should have been, because there was nothing there under the wet hood. No skin, no eyes, no mouth, just a wet, dark void like the rain itself had hollowed him out. Mel yelped and backed up, nearly tripping, and Trevor cursed under his breath. "Bro, what the is that?" And then, as if responding, the speaker crackled and the same calm, wrong voice whispered, "Open the window." I felt my jaw lock and I said, "We're calling the cops," even though I doubted anything human would respond to that threat. And as soon as those words left my mouth, the entire store went dead silent. No rain, no fryer hiss, no freezer hum. Just silence heavy enough that I swear I felt it pressing on my chest. Then the front door chimed. Once, soft, like someone barely pushed it. Trevor shouted, "It's locked, right? Bro, it's locked." But Mel screamed, "No, it's not. Trevor, you didn't lock it earlier, remember? You said you'd do it later." And before she even finished her sentence, the lights flickered and the beeping of the receipt printer started going insane, printing ticket after ticket. 1 times Ridge Runner melt, paid in cash, pickup. Now, over and over until the paper rolled onto the floor in long tangled ribbons. I grabbed Mel's arm and whispered, "Back room, now." And Trevor didn't argue for once. We hurried toward the storage area, but halfway there the grill sizzled behind us, even though I had cleaned it and shut it off. And when I turned my head, a single raw patty was sitting in the center, cooking, even though the grill wasn't on, and the smell, God, the smell wasn't beef. It was like wet soil mixed with rust and something old, like a flooded basement. Mel gagged, whispering, "Nolan, what is happening?" But I didn't have an answer, because the front door chimed again, louder this time, and footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed on the tile, getting closer, and Trevor whispered, "Bro, please tell me that's a customer being stupid." But none of us believed that. We pressed into the back room, slamming the door, and Trevor pushed a crate in front of it, even though it wouldn't help. Mel was shaken, whispering over and over, "He shouldn't know that order. It's not real. We don't sell that. Why is he asking for that?" Like she was trying to convince herself this wasn't happening. I tried calling 911, but my phone screen glitched, flashing static. Then a text appeared, even though I had no signal. "I'm waiting." My hands went cold. Trevor grabbed my phone, his voice cracking. "Dude, this is some sick prank." But then the doorknob twitched, just once, soft, like someone testing it. Mel covered her mouth, tears spilling, and Trevor whispered, "Don't make a sound." But the knob twisted again, slow, steady, deliberate, and the hum of the freezers kicked back on. But instead of the normal low buzz, it sounded like breathing, heavy breathing, like something huge was pressed against the other side. I grabbed the metal broom handle from the corner because the idea of doing nothing made me nauseous. And Trevor whispered, "Nolan, dude, if that door opens." But he didn't finish because the lights snapped off, plunging us into total darkness. Mel whimpered, and I reached for her, pulling her close, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay." Even though I was lying straight to her face, the darkness felt alive, thick, moving. And then we heard it, right at the door, a wet dragging sound, like someone sliding something heavy across the tiles, followed by a soft thump, then another, then a slow inhale, inches from us, even through the door. Trevor couldn't take it. He broke, whisper shouting, "What do you want?" And the breathing stopped instantly. For a second, the entire building felt like it froze. Then, through the door, the calm voice answered, My order. I can't explain what happened next because the docker didn't open. It didn't need to. The darkness itself seemed to pull back like a curtain, and for a split second, even without light, I saw something in that room with us. Tall, dripping, hooded, holding something in its hand, something wrapped in soggy Wendy's paper, something that looked like a burger left in a lake for a month, and the voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. Order complete. The next thing I remember is waking up in the parking lot as the sun was rising. My uniform soaked, my hands muddy, my heart feeling like it had been held underwater. Mel was next to me, shaking uncontrollably, and Trevor was nowhere, gone, vanished like he'd been erased. Wendy's doors were locked from the inside, even though we didn't lock them, and through the glass, I saw the monitors flickering with the same words. 1 times Ridge Runner melt, paid in cash, pick up now. I quit that morning. Mel left town 2 days later. Nobody ever found Trevor. That Wendy's shut down a month ago, but last night I drove past it on my way home, and the lights were on. The drive-through menu was glowing, and on the monitor, clear as day, a new ticket printed itself and pressed against the glass from the inside. 1 times Ridge Runner melt, paid in cash, pick up now. Fridays had always been Jake's favorite night of the week. It wasn't because of the weekend ahead or the relief of finishing work. No, it was because of Wendy's. For the past year, Jake had stuck to his routine religiously. Every Friday at 10:30 p.m., he pulled into the Wendy's parking lot, ordered a Baconator large fries and a Coke, and sat in his usual booth by the window. He liked the quiet hum of the restaurant. At that hour, most customers had left, leaving only a few stragglers. The employees were winding down, prepping for closing. It was peaceful. And then she appeared. If it had been an ordinary night, just like any other. When Jake first saw Sophie, she walked in at 10:45 p.m. Just as he was unwrapping his burger slim with long dark hair and an easygoing smile, she carried an energy that felt completely out of place in a fast food joint. At that hour, she didn't hesitate. She walked right up to his table and grinned. "You mind if I sit here?" Jake blinked, taken aback. Sure." And just like that, his routine changed forever. Sophie wasn't like anyone Jake had ever met. She was funny, effortlessly charming, and she loved Wendy's just as much as he did. "You always eat alone?" she asked, dipping a fry into her frosty. Jake shrugged. "Yeah, I like the peace and quiet. Peace and quiet are overrated late night. Wendy's is where the real magic happens." He chuckled. "Magic," she nodded. "Think about it. The best conversations happen at places like this. Strangers meeting, paths crossing, and maybe, just maybe, something unforgettable starts here." Jake couldn't argue with that because after that night, Sophie kept coming back every Friday, 10:45 p.m. No texts, no calls, no plans. She just showed up and Jake always waited for her. Sophie had a strange fascination with Wendy's, not just the food, but the history. "Did you know someone went missing from this Wendy's a few years ago?" she said. One night, Jake frowned, what she nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Yeah, back in 2019, a girl who worked the closing shift one night. She just vanished, no security footage. No signs of a struggle, just gone." Jake shivered. "That's creepy as hell." Sophie grinned. "I love creepy." She told him more stories, urban legends, whispers of strange occurrences at this very Wendy's, the lights flickering at night, the freezer door opening by itself, employees hearing voices. Jake laughed it off, but a small part of him felt uneasy. Then one night, Sophie said something that stuck with him. "You know what's the scariest part?" What she leaned in her voice barely above a whisper. "What if she never really left?" And then one Friday, Sophie didn't come. Jake waited until midnight. She never walked through the door. Maybe something came up. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she just got bored of him. But then she missed the next Friday. And the next 2 months, Jake tried looking her up online. No trace, no social media, No mutual friends, nothing. It was like she didn't exist, but that was impossible because he had memories of her conversations, laughter, and then there were the photos. Jake scrolled through his phone, his heart pounding. He had taken pictures with Sophie. He was sure of it, but as he flipped through them, something felt wrong. The photos were there, his table at Wendy's, his food, the empty seat across from him, but Sophie wasn't in any of them. Jake couldn't let it go. He went to the Wendy's manager, pretending to be a concerned friend. "My friend used to meet me here every Friday night, but she disappeared. Do you have any security footage?" The manager hesitated but agreed to check. The screen flickered to life. Jake saw himself sitting at his usual booth, eating, talking, laughing alone. There was no Sophie. There was never any Sophie. He felt sick. His mind raced. Had he imagined her? Was he losing it? And then, just before the footage cut off, something moved, a shadow right behind him. A figure watching the manager leaned in, frowning. "That's weird. That's the same spot where one of our employees disappeared years ago." Jake's stomach dropped. Sophie's words echoed in his head. What if she never really left? Jake tried to move on. He stopped going to Wendy's, stopped thinking about Sophie. But then one night at 10:45 p.m., his phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. "Jake, help me. I can't leave." His blood ran cold. The message was followed by a photo. It was his usual booth at Wendy's, and sitting there smiling at the camera was Sophie. But something was wrong. Her eyes were empty. Her skin was pale. And behind her, a dark figure loomed in the reflection of the window. The same shadow from the footage. Jake's hands shook. His breathing grew ragged. Then another message appeared. "Come back, you're the only one who can see me." Jake stared at his phone, his mind screaming at him to ignore it. But deep down, he knew he had no choice. He grabbed his keys and drove straight to Wendy's. Jake pulled into the Wendy's parking lot at 10:55 p.m. The lot was nearly empty, except for a single car parked near the side, a dark old sedan that looked like it hadn't moved in years. His heart pounded as he stepped out of his car. This was stupid. Sophie wasn't real. He had seen the footage. He had been alone. But then, why was she texting him? Why did the air feel thick, heavy, like something was waiting for him? The restaurant was just as he remembered, bright fluorescent lights, the faint smell of fries and grease. The employees behind the counter barely glanced at him. Jake walked to his booth. The booth where he had sat with Sophie empty, but on the table sat her phone. His breath caught in his throat. He recognized it immediately. The red case, the small cat sticker on the back. Sophie's phone. He reached out, hesitating. His fingers barely rushed the screen. Bang, the kitchen door swung open violently. Jake jumped, spinning around. Nothing, just a flickering light in the back. He turned back to the table and his phone buzzed again. Turn around, a chill ran down his spine. He wasn't alone. Jake turned slowly, heart hammering against his ribs. The restaurant was empty, except for a shadow near the back of the kitchen, a shape not quite human. Then movement, a flicker of motion. Something shifting in the darkness, and then a whisper, soft, raspy, right next to his ear. "Jake, you came back." He spun around. No one was there. His phone buzzed again. Another text. "I need you to see me. Come to the freezer." Jake clenched his jaw. He should leave, he should run, but he didn't. He walked toward the back, toward the freezer. The closer he got, the colder the air became. The freezer door stood slightly open, a thin mist leaking out. Jake hesitated, then gathering every ounce of courage, he pushed the door open. The freezing air hit him like a wall. The light inside flickered weakly. Shelves of frozen burger patties and bags of fries lined the walls. And in the center of the room, a figure, Sophie. Her back was turned to him, her long dark hair cascading down her shoulders. Her arms hung limply at her sides. She was wearing the same outfit from the night she first sat with him. Jake's throat went dry. Sophie, slowly, too slowly. She turned around her face. She was smiling, but it wasn't right. Her mouth stretched too wide. Her eyes were too dark, too empty. And her lips moved, but her voice didn't match. "You can finally see me now." The door slammed shut behind him. Jake stumbled back, his breath turning to mist in the cold air. What the cat is happening?" He choked out. Sophie took a step closer, her head tilting unnaturally to the side. "I was never real, was I?" she whispered. "Not to them, but to you. To you, I was." Jake's mind raced. What did she mean? His phone buzzed one last time. A new message from Sophie's number. Check the news. October 2019. With shaking hands, Jake pulled up a search. Wendy's employee missing 2019. And there it was. Sophie Carter, 22, missing from Wendy's after her late shift. Last seen entering the freezer, body never recovered. Jake's breath caught in his throat. She had been real, but she had never left. His hands trembled as he lifted his gaze back to her. Sophie smiled. "Now you know?" And then the lights cut out. The cold rushed in, and Jake screamed. Jake woke up in his car. The Wendy's parking lot was empty. The restaurant was closed. His phone was in his lap. No missed calls, no texts, no messages from Sophie. Had it all been a dream? Had he imaged everything? He turned to his right, and his blood ran cold. Sitting in the passenger seat was Sophie's phone, unlocked, a single photo open on the screen. Jake sitting at his booth, and behind him a dark figure smiling. Jake never went back to Wendy's. He deleted Sophie's number. He tried to forget, but every Friday at 10:45 p.m., his phone buzzed a message, always the same. "Come back, you're the only one who can see me one night." He blocked the number, turned off his phone, and yet somewhere deep in the silence of the night, he swore he could still hear her whisper, "You can finally see me now."